All right, we've got some new mortgage rules coming out of OSFI that, in my opinion, would completely kill real estate investing as we know it. But I might be wrong. Let's go over it, and I don't know, maybe you guys can help me understand what the hell it is they are talking about. So the title is OSFI clarifies capital treatment of income-producing residential real estate. Regulator confirms banks must avoid double counting borrower income when classifying investment-oriented mortgages. At OSFI's quarterly industry day, the regulator stressed that income used to qualify for one mortgage cannot simply be counted again for another, tightening how both rental and employment income can be applied across multiple properties. The intent is to ensure that income that's used for one mortgage is not then again used a second time for another one. So the income that was used on the first mortgage is removed or corrected for when assessing a borrower's additional properties. So I don't know, like when I first read this, I was like, no, this can't actually be what they're doing. It's just so hard for me to believe that this is what they're actually doing, right? But to me, it sounds like if you make $100,000 a year and you buy a property, and 2 years later, if you still make $100,000 a year and you want to buy a second property, the bank will effectively, for the purpose of getting a second mortgage, will recognize you as making $0 per year. So unless your income went from $100,000 to $200,000 per year in those 2 years, then maybe you'd have a new $100,000 of income to use to buy the second property. I don't know if that's the case, but that's the only way that I'm looking at this. This is the only way that it reads, in my opinion. Like, I don't see any other way how this would read. And if that's the case, that is going to effectively destroy the small mom and pop landlord, small time investor, because they need that income to buy the second property. Most people don't just have an additional $80,000 of income that came out of nowhere, right? They need to use that $100,000 again and, paired with the rental income that's going to come in and add that to their application to buy the second property. So I might be wrong, but that is how that's reading to me. And the reason why they're doing this probably is to tightening the lending restrictions, because defaults are rising would maybe be one part of it. And a second part would be like, this is just what people wanted, man. People wanted to get rid of the investors. They basically just don't want anybody to make any money, right? It's like misery loves company, right? We don't want to be broke while you're making money. We'd rather have it where everybody's just broke together. Because if you live in Canada, what else are you going to invest in, right? Like, you have real estate and you have US equities, right? And I'm sure there's like some niche thing in Canada you can invest in. Listen, I research this all day. I don't watch Netflix. I listen to podcasts and audiobooks when I drive. Like, literally all my free time is spent researching, investing, and the economy. And I can tell you that I don't know of anything better to invest in than real estate and US equities. So if it's not going into Canadian real estate, my money's going into US equities, right? And I know real estate is an unproductive asset, but at least it does something for the Canadian economy, right? Like, people buy a home, they use a realtor, that realtor makes money, the mortgage broker makes money, the lawyer makes money, then they hire contracts to maintain and service that property. If they're buying a pre-sale, that fuels the construction industry. It does something for the economy. It's not completely unproductive. Whereas if you just bought Amazon stock, all of that money is pretty much going into the US economy for the most part, right? Like, there's, Amazon employees in Canada, but I think if you bought a condo here, that would probably directly do more for the Canadian economy than buying US equities. So I don't think this is a good thing, but it could be one of those scenarios where it's like buying the last version of the gas Corvette before they make the rest of them electric. Now you have an asset that's going to be scarce, because I think this is going to do a couple things. I think this is going to completely destroy the pre-sale model as we know it. If I'm understanding this correctly, and I could be wrong, this is like all the information we have on it right now. And I'm sure there's going to be some variance. What's the word I'm looking for? Nuance to the implementation of this rule. It's probably not going to be as cut and dry as I'm reading it right now, but it's going to kill the pre-sale model if they roll it out in the exact way as it's reading right now and the way that I understand it. And if that's the case, developers are going to be building rental for the most part, or they might build like townhomes and then sell them once they're already built, right? But condos is going to be a very hard product to sell, right? So for condos, it's going to be rental, okay? And if that's the case, then that means there's going to be very little supply getting built to actually live in, to actually purchase. And if that's the case, then that product, if immigration eventually comes back at some point, will be in low supply. And if that's the case, that means the prices of that supply that you can purchase and live in will have to go up in price. So although the landscape looks bad for investors now, it could be similar to buying the gas Corvette before they start making all of them electric. But yeah, I don't know. Probably not going to be a good thing. Anytime we do these things, it usually never ends up being good. So it's, I've said it like 100 times this channel. It's like playing whack-a-mole, right? It's like some problem comes up, that's the problem, and then we hit the whack-a-mole, and then another problem comes up that's, indirectly caused because of the thing, because of the mole that we whacked down. Another one pops up over here. Oh, well, ban Airbnb. And then it's like Kelowna's tourism plummets. Pops up over here, right? So I don't know what mole is going to pop up, but I would imagine it's probably going to have to do with resale supply that you can actually purchase to live in, right? If they do this, I don't know how pre-sale survives. That's like, I dare say probably 70% of the purchases in pre-sale condos are investors. And if you lose that pool of buyers, then you effectively can't hit your pre-sales. And if you can't hit your pre-sales, then you can't build anything. And then the construction, that's another mole, is the construction side of things, right? If we're not building anything and there's no construction and there's less jobs in that sector. And yeah, I mean, that's one of the drawbacks that I see of this. And again, it's not 100%. And again, I could be completely wrong with the way that I'm reading this, but you tell me, what does that sound like, right? It says to ensure that income that's used from one mortgage is not then again used a second time for another one. So the income that was used on the first mortgage is removed or corrected for when assessing a borrower's additional properties. Because the way it works right now with most banks is you can't have more than 44%. Your debt payments can't be more than 44% of your gross income. So if you make $10,000 a month, you can't have debt payments that exceed $4,400 a month. And so long as that is the case, you can buy another property. So long as it's less than that $4,400 a month. And it may not be exactly right. I'm not a mortgage broker, but that's the rough idea, right? So they don't necessarily look at your income. They're looking at your debt payments in relation to that income to qualify you for property, right? So if you own one property that you used $100,000 to buy that property with, but maybe it's one of those special offers where you could do a 35-year AM and then you got a good interest rate and that, significantly drops the payment. Well, then you might be able to buy a second property with that same income, even though the balance of this mortgage is really high, right? Well, now, if you buy a property with $100,000, regardless of the amortization, regardless of anything else, you can't use that income again. That's the way that I'm reading this, and I could be wrong. And if that's the case, it's pretty much going to completely kill the small residential investor. And you're probably just going to have I guess people could put their money in REITs, right? Like if you really wanted a stake in real estate, you could buy a REIT, but REITs kind of suck, in my opinion. I don't really like them, but some people like them. Some people use them. I guess that would be the new real estate investing in Canada. Is instead of just buying a property yourself, you would just buy a REIT that then uses that money to, they can just go buy $2 million commercial property cash because they're using other people's money to do that. Or maybe they're getting a commercial mortgage or who knows, right? So anyways, I don't think it's that great. As most of these policy changes are, they typically end up being bad later on down the road. But we'll have to see what happens. Like I said, there's probably going to be some nuance to this when they roll it out. That's typically what they do. When they announce these things, it's like very cut and dry. But then when they actually implement it, there's some more nuance and variance to it. But we'll have to see what happens. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. If you want to chat with me about buying or selling in the Fraser Valley, link down in the description. Otherwise, I'm that Agent Kelly. I'm making moves to move you. Peace.